This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network is The Athletic. And listeners of this very podcast can get 20% off the first year of an annual subscription from The Athletic, which is premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans, by going online to theathletic.com/DSP. And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, along to my usual broadcast partner and fun and sidekick. That is Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how are you doing, man?
Vito, it's upon us. Opening week is here. The Detroit Tigers are going to take the field for real. The games are going to count. It's that time of year, bro. It's that time of year when hope springs eternal. Everyone's excited. I know in Detroit, maybe the level of excitement is dipped. I know everyone's kind of talking about the attendance. What's it going to look like? Opening day at Comerica Park. First things first, I looked at the weather. Obviously, everyone kind of likes to check in on the weather. What's it going to be like? One of the big reasons why both you and I have the day off, but we're not going downtown is, looks like so far, 70% chance of rain. It might be doom and gloom at Comerica Park this year. Might be one of those days where you and I sit back and throw some back at a bar or something. But going downtown in crappy weather right now, as we're recording this, it's kind of a gloomy, rainy day. I'm thinking, you know what? Opening day 2018 might be one for a bar inside, go somewhere new and have a good time, have some bar food and have a good time watching the Detroit Tigers probably lose opening day.
Well, the thing is, the Tigers, that means opening day might get delayed until Friday. So we might have to wait until Friday to see Jordan Zimmermann pitch. Oh, my God. Oh, I'm in so much pain over that. So disappointed that I might have to wait until Friday to see J-Zimm pitch.
Oh, my goodness, Vito. I didn't even entertain the thought of the game not being played. It's a 1 o'clock start, so potentially they probably will wait till 7, maybe even as late as 8 o'clock, right?
I wonder. For opening day, they'll wait for a while, wait a longer period of time than they maybe would normally. The thing is, though, at a certain point, you got to call it. I don't think they would wait that long, though. I don't think they would wait until 7 or 8 o'clock. I would say 5 o'clock max. And then that means if they do call it, it would be delayed until Friday. Would as many people show up? And already attendance numbers are in question about opening day being on Thursday, the official start of the season for the Tigers. So if it's delayed until Friday, how many less people then show up to the ballpark on Friday?
Yeah, Vito, I was checking the secondary market. You can still get 20 tickets together for opening day. It's bad, but we've talked about it. Fans have a right not to go. A lot of people have talked about some reasons why they don't go in regards to the weather, in regards to the fact that, you know what? I think it's more fun to be in a group of people at a bar, engaging in, adult activities, drinking.
Hijinks and hilarity.
The food's cheaper. You can leave. You can basically enjoy yourself a little bit more than going to the ballpark on opening day. I think for opening day, you do it once. Vito, the vibe around the park is a lot better than the vibe in the park. And so that's why people downtown have a really good time with it. The bars are really hopping. People have a good time downtown. And I do believe this year might be one of those years where the attendance is going to be really bad. It's going to be a hard draw to get people in. But in the end, doesn't matter. Baseball's upon us. We're doing a baseball podcast. You and I have not given up. You and I are not going to just ignore the Detroit Tigers throughout the year. We're going to sit back. We're going to watch the games. We're going to analyze what we see with Ron Gardenhire, and it's going to be an exciting time. You and I are just crazy enough to be able to just sit and watch a baseball game and look for the intricacies, look for some development from some of these young cats. It's upon us, man. I'm really excited. During the offseason and spring training, you do get a chance to kind of passively look at things in terms of who's out there, who's doing what. But now when the season starts, when that first pitch hits, we know we get a chance to start watching. And Jordan Zimmermann is going to be counted upon to do some big things. And hey, if he gets the nod, then he's got to deliver and he's got to do the job.
So I was thinking of this. You talked about how you can really kind of dictate when you want to leave when you're at a bar, another remote location outside of the ballpark on opening day. Well, yeah, the good thing is, too, is that, after Jordan Zimmermann allows, 5 home runs in 2 innings or something, you can leave the bar and forget about it. Or just keep drinking in misery and drink your brains out because you don't want to see any more Tigers baseball that day or really the rest of the season, Doc.
You can get 2 or 3 beers for the price of 1 at a bar. why would people want to significantly overpay for booze when you can go, especially if you know somebody, you can go get beers $2, $3 a pop, specials, things like that. It's a fun time, and I've done both. I've gone to opening day at Comerica Park, watched the game, and I've gone outside of the ballpark. And by and large, having a few too many outside of the ballpark was way better on my wallet, and I had a lot more fun too, especially with the young females, all the fun, all the co-eds that go down there, and especially, too, the older women, too. They like to have a good time. You throw them a couple drinks.
Everybody does. Why are you just talking about the females? Males and females, a myriad of females and males, young and old.
Tomorrow on opening day, I'll share a picture I took maybe 7 years ago of a time when someone photobombed my photo, and I was at opening day. It was good stuff. Maybe I'll tweet it out as you're talking about the Tigers here. I'll dig it up on one of the phones here, and I'll post it because it's opening day, baby, and the DOC is ready to party. Maybe you'll partake, and actually, maybe I'll invite you, and you'll actually come out, and we'll have a good time with it. I think it's fun. I think it's warranted that it's opening day. It's a time for everybody to get together, take a day off, enjoy it. Would you want to broadcast live that day? Some people are actually, going around town at these bars and
we could do a little Periscope. Why not? Have some fun. I told you before, maybe at Tap and Barrel or somewhere else, but we love Tap and Barrel. We love Matt Aubrey. He's DJing downtown or something now, the big timer is?
Yeah, big timer.
Look at that, man.
Obviously, he's a man in demand. And
yeah, I like that. A man in demand.
A man in demand, and he's a great DJ, and it's a great opportunity to go down there. He said basically that's where the buzz is at.
The buzz and the booze.
The buzz and the booze is downtown, baby.
Yeah. And we can still have a lot of fun. It brings people together. I mean, people that don't even know baseball, don't even know one player on the Tigers, maybe besides for Miguel Cabrera. But you know what's going to be funny? You're going to have people that come downtown to watch the Tigers, to be a part of the opening day festivities, Doc, that don't even know that Justin Verlander's been traded. I mean, they'll be wearing a Justin Verlander jersey. Where's Justin at? I thought he's starting. No, it's Jordan Zimmermann. This guy had a 6+ ERA last year, and Ron Gardenhire comes into this situation after 4 straight seasons, I believe, and the end of his tenure with the Twins of losing baseball. I mean, heavy losing, where they finished in 4th place at least with the Twins in his tenure there at the very end, Doc.
Now, this podcast is going to be an extended podcast. We're kicking off the regular season. We're kicking off the Tigers Talk 2018 podcast season with a good 45, 50-minute edition. As you all know, we've been doing 30 minutes during spring training. But this episode, we got 2 great guests.
We do.
And before we get to the guests, you'll tell me who they are. You wrote a piece for the Detroit Athletic Company, and you wrote that you kind of made an argument that you believe the Tigers can finish, indeed, in 3rd place. Tell me about that, and who are our guests this week?
Our guests are Dan Hasty, the voice of the West Michigan Whitecaps, which is a low A-ball affiliate of the Detroit Tigers. He'll be on. I just met him, which is funny. So I just met him, talked to him in person for the first time ever, and then you hooked it up where he's coming on this week's edition of Tigers Talk. And then following him is Ryan Ford, making his long-awaited return to the DSP network airwaves. He loves coming on. We love having him on. He's a baseball nut, loves some Tigers baseball, loves Major League Baseball news and notes. He's all over the scene when it comes to baseball. And so those 2 guests are our guests on this week's edition of Tigers Talk as we preview opening day and look forward into the Tigers season. And now reversing a little bit to what you noted, that I wrote a piece, so here's a shameless plug, at least you noted it first, that I did an article for the Detroit Athletic Company blog, and about the Tigers having a realistic shot. And I mean, yes, realistic shot, even though I've been the pessimist, being optimistic here that they can finish in 3rd place. As high as that, but that is the ceiling for the Tigers. And because of a myriad of reasons, but in my opinion, Dak, most notably that the Royals and the White Sox will also stink and stink heavily in 2018.
So you're thinking that when the season shakes out after 162 games, you think their spot in the standings will be 3rd place?
Never said that. Now, if you read my article actually attentively, whatever you want to use to describe reading it more in depth, you'll notice that in my in-depth piece, I write about how the best case scenario for the Tigers is 3rd place. That is their ceiling. They're not doing any better than 3rd place. They want to be scratching the surface when it comes to 2nd place. Nowhere near the 2nd place finisher, in my opinion, who will be the Minnesota Twins for a 2nd straight campaign. A team that could make the wild card. I could see making the wild card as well this season, like they did last year under the leadership of Paul Molitor. 1st place, by far, in my opinion, is the Indians. They could win the division. Now, the Twins are better, an improved ball club compared to last year. They've added some rotation depth, adding Lance Lynn, Jake Odorizzi. They'll finish in 2nd, but the Indians still, heads and shoulders above the rest of the competition. And I see them winning the division by 7 or 8 games. But the Tigers, once again, I wrote about in this Detroit Athletic Company blog piece saying that the best case scenario for the Tigers is 3rd place. But in my opinion, my prediction right now, I know we're doing this early on in this week's edition of Tigers Talk, but I'll say 4th place. That is my prediction for the Tigers in 2018, with the caveat being that they could potentially finish in third.
Wow, Vito. I was hoping that you maybe turned it around based upon our off-season conversations, but no, you're sticking to your guns. You are pessimistic all the way through and through.
Hey,
and
third
there's
place,
no change in your mind.
Saying there could be a third-place finish. Now, I was told to write a piece about the best-case scenario, so I was told to be an optimist. I'm not the eternal optimist when it comes to the Tigers. I haven't been. I've been preaching the gospel of the Tigers will suck, haven't I, for a long, long time about this campaign coming up. But I guess there is a hope, right, that they could finish in third. So we have to be optimistic in that regard that there could be a third-place finish. And once again, because, Doc, you might not know this, but other people should. I'm going to inform you now, too. The White Sox and Royals once again will smell up the joint in 2018. And the Royals are being predicted, actually, by a lot of people now, surprisingly maybe to you and to others, to finish in last place in the AL Central. Not the White Sox, not the Tigers, but the KC Royals. And that's because of their myriad of losses, including losing Lorenzo Cain and Eric Hosmer in the offseason, Doc.
All right, time for our first timeout. We'll come back. We'll get Dan Hasty on the blower. We'll have a chance to have a great baseball conversation. Stay tuned for that, as well as Ryan Ford. Stay with us. Quick timeout right now.
And, Doc, one of our fine sponsors at the DSP Network is the Detroit Sports Commission. And since 2001, the Sports Commission has been responsible for bringing many marquee events to the Metro Detroit area. And I mean amateur, national, and even international sporting events. And one of the most recent events they brought to our very region, Doc, were the first and second rounds of the NCAA tournament, where we saw your Spartans bow out prematurely in the second round to the lowly Syracuse Orangemen, who just lost to Duke. So I guess they weren't going to stick around for too much longer. But anyways, always bringing great events is the background of the Detroit Sports Commission, what the DSC stands for and is all about, where champions are made and championships, guys, are played, all through the Detroit Sports Commission. And follow the DSC on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports. And you can check out everything else about the Detroit Sports Commission by going to their very fine website at detroitsports.org. And now joining us on this week's episode of Tigers Talk via Vito's VIP line for a fresh and tasty look at the Tigers is Dan Hasty, the play-by-play man of the West Michigan Whitecaps, the low A-ball affiliate of the Detroit Tigers. Dan, how are you doing?
Good to have you, boys. Thanks for giving me the shout. I appreciate it. Big fan of the show.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this. And you know what? We just met. And it's crazy now that you're on the podcast this week, and you were calling high school basketball, the high school boys basketball state finals at the Breslin Center, and you called some spring training action very recently as well, right before that, and you've been on this crazy ride. I mean, how do you prep for all these different events, Dan, and just know everything that you do?
Well, you fake it till you make it. I think that's the first way. But the thing is that when it came to the Tigers, I had grown up a huge Tigers fan. And, even though I could never remember what I had for lunch yesterday, I could remember what, Lou Whitaker hit in 1991. I don't know why, but it just some stuff sticks with you and some stuff doesn't. So I was always keenly interested in the Tigers on every single level. So I was actually told before I ended up doing the Tigers games by multiple people who advised, just said, whatever you do, don't over prepare. And so, because you don't want to get too stat heavy and bog down your broadcast with a bunch of numbers that nobody cares about. I mean, you and me, because we're uber Tigers people, might actually care what Jordan Zimmermann's ERA is in spring training. But most people really don't. So it's important to kind of differentiate between what people actually care about and what a few people might actually care about.
Less preparation is key then, huh? According to you, Dan.
Well, with the Tigers, it was just, it was already all there. Mm-hmm. So there really wasn't a whole lot that had to go into it. So I felt lucky in that regard. But as for the high school basketball stuff, that's a tough one to do because you've got a new team every single night and you've got new players every single night. So that one's a bit more of a challenge than I think people would realize. And honestly, it was a lot easier for me to call Tigers baseball than it is to call high school basketball.
And because you love the Tigers, you know the Tigers, and you finally got the chance to call some games on the radio in the place of another famous Dan Dickerson recently. How did that go for you, by the way?
Well, it was everything you ever thought it could be. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, so it was, we had a blast. We had a really good time. Jim Price was, he was exceptional. And so for Jim to welcome me in, because, I've talked to some guys, and some guys, they get their crack in the big leagues, and sometimes it's not always a smooth ride. And, you think about it, and because everybody's very protective and, they don't want to give up their spots, but Dan Dickerson has been very gracious to allow me the chance to do that. And Jim Price was nothing but was just fabulous. So to work with the two of them and to share the microphone with Jim was really cool, having grown up listening to Jim almost every single night alongside Dan Dickerson as of recently, and before him, Ernie Harwell.
So that must have been so surreal. I mean, absolutely surreal then for you.
No question. And that was always, that wasn't just a dream. That was the ultimate. So to even get the chance to do it, even for a couple of spring training games, was very, very special. And it's still one of those things that you kind of have to pinch yourself with. But we had a really good time. We had a chance to really delve in and get a chance to look at a lot of the young players in the Tigers system. And that's what we were trying to do. And that was kind of our objective from day one, was to have an angle on a lot of these guys that, look at the team at the major league level. It's going to be a lot of young guys looking to make names for themselves and to prove themselves at the big league level. So all we wanted to do was just give an opportunity and give a platform to supplement that.
Now, ahead of opening day, a lot of fans are probably a little bit cautiously optimistic regarding the 2018 Detroit Tigers. People are talking
cautiously optimistic. Is that what we're calling it?
Yes, cautiously optimistic. We know it's going to be rough, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel situation because of the fact that we know it's a rebuild. What do you make of the 2018 Tigers, and how are you going to make it through this basically a long season?
Well, I'll tell you this, and it's not to bag on any of the teams of the past, but this edition of the Tigers, and I think guys like you who really understand what it's like at player development and the importance of getting good young talent, you guys will understand this as well. This is the most intriguing year for me that I've watched the Tigers since about, maybe 2012 or 13, probably since they made that big run in 13 and came up short. This is the most interested I've been. Do I think they're going to be a great team? No, I don't. But I do think that this is a very important fundamental year and a foundational year. And the success of this season won't be if they win 90 games. The success of this year will be if they find an everyday third baseman. It'll be if they find a solid complement to Michael Fulmer in their rotation. Those will be the things, Shane Green proves himself as a dominant closer, which I think he can do. Those will be the reasons that this team is successful or not this year. And if those things do break their way, even if they don't end up staying in Detroit, those are storylines and those are players that the Tigers can turn into future assets. So everything is geared towards the years ahead. And so this year, to me, the wins and losses are completely irrelevant. It's just about finding the guy who you can see on this team 5 to 7 years from now, who's going to be part of a real contender.
So many young, exciting, ball players to be on the lookout for. Who are you most looking forward to watching at West Michigan, actually, this season?
Well, we're hoping that Matt Manning, who was the club's first-round pick back in 2016, will be part of that equation. We don't have it confirmed that he will be in West Michigan. There's been some talk that Matt Manning could end up in High A Lakeland, but they only gave him a short amount of time in West Michigan last year. So my gut instinct says that Matt Manning will be back in West Michigan to begin the year. If nothing else, they have to get him healthy first because he suffered an oblique strain towards the end of spring training, and those things can be tricky to come back from. But they also, best case scenario, they give him, 2 months worth of starts he dominates, and then he can go up to Lakeland and he'll be playing against guys that are 2 and 3 years older than him. So that would really cement his prospect status. Matt Manning's the first guy. There's a couple other guys that are interesting as well in the pitching staff, especially. The Whitecaps had the best team ERA in all of full season minor league baseball last season. They were just outstanding with their pitching staff. So I think there's a kid at Connecticut named by the name of Dane Myers who pitched very well for Connecticut. I think he'll probably pop up on some prospect lists as the course of the season goes on. One of the players the Tigers got in the Ian Kinsler trade, a pitcher by the name of Elvin Rodriguez. I have a feeling he could be there. And then their second-round pick and third-round picks of last season, Ronaldo Rivera, who's a power-hitting first baseman and outfielder, and Joey Morgan, a catcher out of the University of Washington. All those guys have real chances to start their season in West Michigan. So I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't think it's fair to expect the results that West Michigan had last season. They had one of their best seasons in franchise history. They went 91-45. They were just incredible. But that was because their pitching staff was excellent. And the pitching staff will probably be solid this year, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect a 90-win team perhaps. But I think they'll be competitive, and I think it's nice to have a guy in Lance Parrish that Tiger fans can identify with back in the dugout.
Absolutely. The big wheel taking over. That's pretty cool, too.
That'll be a lot of fun. And I actually, I've already worked with Lance in the past, and I've gotten a chance to kind of be around him and see how he operates within a clubhouse. And a lot of guys really respect Lance Parrish. So that'll be good. And, he's been in Double-A for the last couple of years. He ends up going to Single-A this year, which you don't see a lot of very often. Usually they don't go from Double-A to A-ball. Usually it's something like the other way around. But in this instance, he gets to come instead of back to, Erie, Pennsylvania, he gets to come back to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he is revered. So that'll be a lot of fun for him.
Lovely Grand Rapids, Michigan. And now we have to transition, though, back to the Tigers. And, we already talked about how it's going to be a long season. They're not going to be very good. The win-loss total won't be very favorable for the Tigers this season. But it's not about that. It's about the young players continuing to develop. So, I just wrote a piece for the Detroit Athletic Company blog, and a little shameless plug there. But I said the ceiling really for the Tigers, in my opinion, is a third-place finish in the American League Central Division, and maybe 75 wins. But that's reliant upon Jordan Zimmermann, Miguel Cabrera, Victor Martinez, all those guys bouncing back. So now I ask you, Dan, I'm putting you on the hot seat kind of here. What's the ceiling for the Tigers in 2018?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think about third place would be about as good as it would get. You just look at the division, and the only reason that third place is a possibility, because in a lot of situations, that would be a favorable projection. But we're in kind of a time in baseball where there's a lot of the haves and the have-nots. And there's only really 10 to 12 teams that are making a serious push towards the postseason. And the rest of them are essentially just, I don't want to say tanking, but they're aiming their resources towards development. How's that? So, you look at the AL Central and you have two teams, the Cleveland Indians and the Minnesota Twins. Those are the two teams that are really geared and built for this year. And I think the Twins decided to really go for this year because the Royals weren't going for anything this year. The Tigers aren't really going for anything this year. And the Chicago White Sox are about a year to maybe a year and a half away. So, you look and it's essentially a 2-horse race in the AL Central. So, yeah, somebody's going to finish in third place. I don't think a team with 75 wins, I think a team with 65 wins could honestly finish in third place in the AL Central this year. I don't think it would take all that much for a third place finish in the American League Central. And like you said, that's okay. It's not about the wins and losses this year. It's about so much more than that, and it's about laying a foundation for the years ahead. And it's a fun process. People haven't seen the Tigers do this in a very long time, and I think people have forgotten how refreshing 2006 was, because it was A, such a surprise, and B, they were getting contributions from so many young players, guys like Curtis Granderson and Justin Verlander included, and that's when you really have your chance to make a real run at any kind of success. So, it's not a surprise that the Tigers had success that they had in 06. In some ways, it was amazing that they had the success they had in those later years, 12, 13, because a lot of their acquisitions were high-priced free agents. And as we've seen, that model just doesn't work. But even then, they were still able to be successful. But I'm excited. I think, again, maybe a third place finish is their ceiling, but I don't get too invested in that.
What was your reaction when you heard the news that Ron Gardenhire was named manager? And for the fans that don't know much about him, can you tell us a little bit about his managerial style and what is Dan Hasty going to expect from Ron Gardenhire as he manages the 2018 Detroit Tigers?
I'm looking forward to seeing what Gardy puts out in the field. He's very straightforward. He's very no nonsense, and I like that about him. He also has had a lot of success working with these types of teams. And look, some people like to point to, well, he's been in last place for the last 4 years when he was a manager. Well, that doesn't really matter. You look at it, and I think a better judge of the success of a guy like Ron Gardenhire is what his teams and what his players that he first managed are doing now in Minnesota. And a lot of those guys have really found ways to take off. So I really do think that you have to judge him based on what these guys are doing. And this is all about player development now. So what I'm hoping to see from him is just more of what he was in Minnesota. And he had those Twins teams that were just really pesky and always just agitated the hell out of Tigers fans. So myself included. So, I think, he'll stress fundamentals. I think he'll be honest with people. And I think people will respect him. And it's not to say that they didn't, but there have been Tiger players in spring training that have said that I think he runs a bit of a tighter ship than the Tigers have had in that dugout for the last couple of years. So I think there will be a little bit more accountability than there will be the ability to slide by and slide under the rules, if you will.
So, Dan, I'll leave you with two quick hitters. And the first one for you is whether or not you see Jordan Zimmermann, Victor Martinez, and Miguel Cabrera all bouncing back in 2018. What are your thoughts on that? Will they all bounce back simultaneously, almost you could say, in 2018?
In a word, no. They won't, because that's not how the law of averages works. I get it. I mean, it's cautiously optimistic, and you want everybody to work out, but history tells us and basic math tells us that not all these guys are going to bounce back. I think the guy with the best chance to bounce back is Miguel Cabrera, and that's by a landslide. His question is less talent related and more health related. So I think that he has the best chance to bounce back. Look, a guy like Victor Martinez, you're talking about a guy who's almost 40 years old, and now it's not a question of, is he healthy? The question is also just as big as saying, is the talent still there? And that's a legitimate question with Victor Martinez. He's had a nice spring, so I'm encouraged about that. And he's had this little track record that every other year he's had a very good season. So I'm like you in that vein. I'm cautiously optimistic that he could have a good year, but I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be something that we'll see. Jordan Zimmermann is another guy that I'm curious about. He's had a solid spring training, and I'm not so sure about Jordan Zimmermann yet, but the results in spring have been solid, and we'll see where that goes. But I think they all have a chance to bounce back. I don't know which one won't. But like I said, the law of averages says that 2 out of those 3 guys, if the Tigers are lucky, will bounce back.
Yeah, not every guy is bouncing back. I agree with you completely. Now, a guy they would like to for sure see bounce back is the opening day starter, Jordan Zimmermann. I mean, he's the opening day starter, and that came out of nowhere for me, even when you take into account his decent spring. But for me, still, I was scratching my head all day long when I first heard that Jordan Zimmermann is going to be the opening day starter this season, Dan. I mean, what were your thoughts when you first found that out, that J-Zimm would be the Tigers' opening day starter?
I think they're just simply trying to build value. I think, look, this is a guy who makes more money than anybody on the staff, and they have more invested in him than anybody on the staff. So I get it. I don't, is he the most talented guy on the staff? I think we can all agree that that's not the case. But this is a guy that if he gets healthy and he can settle down a little bit, he has the track record to show that he'll return to some kind of a form. And I think the Tigers would love to turn him into an asset, or at least convince another team to take his contract off their books. And I think if they can do that this year, that would go a long way for them. So I think there's a bit of a showcase element to this, but I think the idea is right, actually. As much as I'd love to see Michael Fulmer on the mound on opening day, I understand the impetus behind a guy like Jordan Zimmermann, and I think in a lot of ways it makes more sense than people are letting on.
I guess then I am leading on as well. And you know what? Fulmer has many opening days to start in the future. You would have to believe, as long as he stays healthy and quickly playing a big game of Big Vito's over-under. It's hugely popular. I bet you've heard about it, Dan. I mean, it's all over the nation. Widespread. Anyways, over or under 70 wins for the Tigers this season.
I'll say over because I do see, look, I like I said, I think Miguel Cabrera does bounce back this year. And even if a guy like Victor Martinez doesn't, and they do get something from Jordan Zimmermann, now you're talking about 2/3 of your rotation, Zimmermann and Fulmer, who are both rock solid. Then if you get those two in place, then all you need is one of your other three guys to be good for you. And now you're talking at least about a 70-win team. And look, Zimmermann's the question. There's no doubt about that. But if Zimmermann works out and Fulmer works out, now you really don't have to ask a whole lot from the rest of your rotation. It's just to keep the water from coming into the boat. So I can see 70 wins for them.
And Dan, with that, I'll let you go, man. Thanks for all the time, and best of luck this season at West Michigan.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
And back here on Tigers Talk, that was Dan the Man. Dan Hasty, the play-by-play voice of the West Michigan Whitecaps, the low A-ball affiliate of our Detroit Tigers.
Real quickly before we get to Ryan Ford. I know back in the day you used to don the headphones, get behind the mic, and do some play-by-play. You ever think about maybe starting off and maybe doing some of that? Because when people describe it, it seems like it's a good life. You get per diem, you get to kind of travel around and talk baseball. It seems fun, and you might be an interesting cat to try and do it. You ever think about it?
Interesting cat? You think so?
You know what?
I would be a failure. I was a failure at it. No, I wasn't a failure. I didn't bomb out completely.
Do you want to start out maybe calling games for Bryce Bush and De La Salle? Get your way in there? You want to go do that?
I could.
You want to
come out and watch? Can you be my play-by-play partner, though?
Will
you be the color commentator? I guess you would have to be, though. That's the thing. You don't know. No offense. I don't know if you know enough to be the the color commentator, though, for each and every single broadcast.
What are you talking about? Now batting third, Bryce Bush. He had a massive home run last year, Vito.
Yeah, wow. That was a huge home run. Wow. He just blasted off of his bat, man.
See, I could do that.
There you go. So would you be the play-by-play guy then? I'm saying you would be the color commentator.
No.
What are you trying to take on here?
You be the play-by-play. I'll be the analyst.
Wow, and that was your analysis right there?
That was the start. That's my audition tape.
Oh, it better be a start, and that's it. Well, but we can learn something from Dan Hasty. I mean, that guy's rising up the ranks, and he's a young dude.
Vito, what about this? Bryce Bush made an epic appearance on the Detroit Sports Podcast this fall. He's expected to have a big season this year, and one in which he's been heavily recruited and is going to play ball in the SEC. I think Bryce Bush has a bright future, Vito. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, too. Oh, great analysis. You nailed it there. Better, in depth. No, but you can BS. Not that you would every single time, every single batter or pitcher, but you could fake your way until you make it almost. I think you could because you're a good BSer at times, aren't you? Admit it.
And Vito, I get the sense of the analyst kind of sits back and provides a little bit of the color for the play-by-play guy. You do all the heavy lifting, and I just kind of,
you like that, and then you get the free food. Yeah, you like that part, like you were saying about Dan. And
I can do the superlatives. Yeah. Wow, Vito, that Bryce Bush, going to be a strong player in the SEC. Back to you.
Hell of a player. Expert analysis. You broke it down like nobody else could, man.
Man, Vito, weather looks nice. Should be a really fascinating game today. Really important.
And you would say that about every single game. Fascinating game. These guys are working hard. The same lines you would give every single broadcast. I know you would, Doc.
All right, let's do it real fast. 1 minute. You started off, and we're talking about De La Salle baseball. Started off. What would your intro be? And we'll do a minute. Let's see what it'd be like. Go ahead. Intro to everybody. We're now live, and we're about to go in 3, 2, 1.
And this is Vito Chirco signing on for the latest broadcast of De La Salle Pilot Baseball from lovely Warren De La Salle High School in Warren, Michigan. And these Pilots last year made a regional final appearance. I think that was the case. And, came close to being a fully equipped squad with everything that they needed. They have the good pitching staff coming into this year, plus an ace bat, a super slugger going to the SEC in Bryce Bush. Committed, signed on the dotted line from Mississippi State. Will be playing next spring at Mississippi State. So they've got the bats, they've got the pitchers, Doc, and we have now come into opening day for the Pilots, and they have mighty high expectations. What are your thoughts on what you see right now, at least on paper, from the De La Salle Pilots?
Vito, I'm thankful to be here, being that I'm an Orthodox Jew. It's very great to be with you here covering De La Salle baseball. I do think that this season is looking to be very promising. A lot of high hopes for this team, and I do think that they can deliver with the leadership of a Bryce Bush, and I think we're going to have a great game here today. I hope it's going to be one filled with a lot of home runs and a lot of hits, and hopefully at the end of the day, at the end of the 9 innings, De La Salle comes away with the victory.
Wow. You would say that every single time.
What do you think?
You're just sprinkling in homerism.
Okay, real fast. I'm not Orthodox Jew, but that was just kind of funny to say.
You
that.
had to throw that in there because De La Salle is not a Jewish school. I like how you threw that in there too. To spice it up, you would add the color, some humor. I could too, but you would add more of it, and that would be your role and all you could do.
What do you think?
How about the knowledge though? The expert analysis, so-called expert analysis. Could you provide enough of that? Anyways, that was our attempt, our first stab at calling any kind of baseball, De La Salle baseball, maybe one day. And it's funny because the only guy that we know truly is Bryce Bush. We're going to always say Bryce Bush, did this, did that, we'll do this, we'll do that. It's like, who else do we know? And we're calling De La Salle baseball. We need the in-depth knowledge. And I don't even know, once again, if they made the regional finals last year. But they won the state title in 2016, so 2 years removed from a state title. Bryce Bush was a part of that squad, led by another head coach in Matt Cook, who taught me English at one point, 2 years of English, I believe it was. And now the new head coach is Dave Zelmansky. There's some knowledge right there that we could sprinkle in to make ourselves sound educated and like we know what we're talking about at the end of the day. But anyways, now I want to seg into a guy that knows what he's talking about all the time when it comes to the Tigers and Major League Baseball news and notes. And that is Ryan Ford of the Detroit Free Press, now an assistant sports editor. And he'll be joining us right after this. And now joining us via Vito's VIP line is Ryan Ford of the Detroit Free Press, an assistant editor in the sports department at the Freep. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. How about you, Vito?
Awesome, man. You know what? I haven't talked to you over these airwaves in a long time, so you're making your long-awaited return to Tigers Talk, and right before opening day. And not a lot of expectations, as you know, for the Detroit Tigers this season, Ryan. And, just to start off, what's your most optimistic outlook about the Tigers going into opening day on Thursday against the Pittsburgh Pirates?
I suppose the most optimistic, I could see them getting to 75 or 76 victories. That's, my most optimistic is actually probably 81 or 82. But
wow, 81 to 82 even. Okay.
Everything would have to go right.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. Zimmermann would have to pitch like he did back when he was a Washington National. Fulmer would have to be completely healthy and pitch up to his all-star level. Even then, I'm not quite sure where they get the pitching. I guess Matt Boyd would have to live up to the promise that he's basically pitched like he pitched in his one-hitter last year. Nick Castellanos have to hit about 40 home runs. Same with Miggy.
I'm just laughing over here. I'm thinking, is that going to even happen? I would love for it to happen, Ryan. I love that you're optimistic.
I mean, hope springs eternal, I suppose. But
yes.
And it's more entertaining to go to baseball games with a good team playing than a bad team. But yeah, that's the best case scenario. I mean, not every year is 2006 where a team comes out of nowhere and makes the leap suddenly. Especially because there just probably isn't enough young talent on this team to make that leap, even with Candelario and Machado joining the starting lineup.
Well, and I was going to say, of the young talent on this year's Major League club for the Tigers, I don't really like Dixon Machado, the light-hitting Dixon Machado, who I guess can field, but he's going to hit around what Jose Iglesias does on a consistent basis. And for me, that's not good enough to cut the mustard seed as a regular at the Major League level. Now, Candelario, the Candyman, I do like him. I think he can produce and be an extremely consistent and effective run producer in the middle of the Tigers' order, or hitting number 2, which I think he will, and that's a wise decision for the Tigers. So I guess I'm just saying right now that J-Zimm, to me, is the best Tigers young player on this Major League club. Who do you think it is? And I guess outside of Michael Fulmer, who we all assume, if healthy, will be really, really good once again, leading the Tigers' rotation.
Yeah, I would agree with you on Candelario. I think I'm interested to see what Mikey Matuk does with a little more playing time now that he's kind of going in, I think, with that left field spot locked up. He was great at times last year once he finally got on the field, and he cooled off a lot in the final 6 weeks of the season. He set a career high with 12 home runs, but he really didn't hit for that much power toward the end of the season. But I think now that he knows he's got a spot, he could do some things. He could show some 20 home run pop.
And now Miguel Cabrera, now you brought him up. You said, the most optimistic outlook for you is the Tigers winning 81 to 82. But now you prefix that by saying, well, there's Cabby hitting 40 home runs, Nicholas Castellanos hitting 40. I don't see either of those things happening. Now, hey, I'm a wishful guy still at some point, even though I've been the pessimist of this podcast week in, week out, really, throughout the offseason. But trying to be optimistic, Cabby, I think, will bounce back. But to what degree do you expect him to bounce back?
I really expect him to hit about 310, 315 with about 30 home runs. Not quite up to his Triple Crown level, of course, but, a solid season. I think, obviously, he's probably never going to have a fully healthy season again. That's just not how guys age in baseball. But at the same time, if he can stay moderately healthy, stay on the field, or if when he does get injured, actually take time and get healthy rather than trying to play through it, because I think that was a major problem last year. And it's tough to knock a guy for wanting to play. I mean, that's what you want out of anybody. But at the same time, you could tell that the injuries were just sapping him of power and the ability to make contact. So if he stays reasonably healthy, I think he's still got 30 home runs in him. I mean, he's still one of the best right-hand hitters of his generation.
And I think the nagging injuries, Ryan, I think you're right. I think you pegged it, that they caught up to him. They were too much for him to overcome, and now as he gets later and later into his career, he can't just play through the injuries. And I think the good thing about Ron Gardenhire, maybe the best thing about him, is that he won't keep playing Miggy through injuries. Where Brad Ausmus, he said, what the heck, and just let him continue to play. Gardy, I think, will sit him down and tell him what's up. Set him straight and say, you're not playing today because you're playing hurt, and you're not going to be able to produce like you once, could when you were playing hurt. So I think that's one very beneficial aspect of Ron Gardenhire taking over for Brad Ausmus.
Absolutely. I think he's going to set a solid tone in the clubhouse, and I can't speak to the clubhouse. I wasn't necessarily in there, but it seemed from the outside as though he was more willing to let the veterans be the veterans, just be themselves and let them go about their business, which is not a bad thing in a manager, but at the same time, he seemed to have problems pulling guys aside and sitting them, basically. And I agree with you. Gardenhire will not be that guy, especially because, honestly, this team, they want to win, but they also want to get a look at a lot of the future prospects. So they're not pushing for anything. Even last year, there was a sense that if they got hot, ran off a 10-game winning streak, they'd be right in the middle of the playoff, at least a wild card spot. Mm-hmm. And this year, there are none of those illusions, which, as depressing as it can make opening a season sound, it's probably for the better.
Well, yeah, you'll get the young players to develop. That's what it's about. It's not about the win-loss total, where the first half of last year, the Tigers spent it as if they were a team that was able to contend, and they did a little bit. We're trying to make the playoffs, at least as a wild card team, but guess what? The Indians were heads and shoulders above the Tigers and everybody else last year, even the Twinkies. And I see that being the case once again this year, Ryan, for the American League Central and how it will shape up. I see the Tribe winning it by 7 or 8 games and the Twinkies finishing in second and maybe making the wild card game once again. What are your thoughts on the American League Central and how you see it shaping up?
I think you called it right with the Indians. They didn't lose much from last year. In fact, they probably got a little better just because their rotation they couldn't keep anyone besides Kluber healthy for most of the year. And this year they have everyone back. I mean, Danny Salazar is kind of penciled in as their 4th or 5th starter. And that's a pretty good 4th or 5th starter. As far as the Twins, I really like what they did in the offseason. They were one of the few teams to kind of go out there and take advantage of the depressed free agent market. They got a lot of nice signings. I mean, they ended up getting Lance Lynn for a song. I mean, $12 million for 1 year is just, compared to Mike Fiers for $6 million. That's, they got a bargain there. And they went in and they fixed their major holes in pitching and the bullpen. They added Logan Morrison to DH. I'll say intrigued to see how the keeping Miguel Sano at third base experiment is going to go. Mm-hmm. Just because I remember Miguel Cabrera moving back to third a few years back when the Tigers signed Prince Fielder, and that was interesting at times. But Sano will hit enough to, at least stay in the lineup. They are a kind of sneaky good team. I think I definitely could see them getting the wild card. I could actually see them giving the Indians a run in, again, the most optimistic of scenarios. But I do think the Indians probably have enough talent to just take the Central outright.
So I have the Indians winning the Central. I have the Yankees winning the East in the American League. I have the Astros winning the American League West. And then the 2 wildcard teams for me, I have right now the Twins and Red Sox. How do you have those divisions actually finishing? Who do you have in first place for the AL East, Central, West? And how about the wild card teams?
Well, I think you pretty much called it. Yeah, I would say the Yankees are the tops in the East. I'm intrigued to see just how many home runs they can actually hit between Judge Stanton, and Gary Sanchez. That'll be interesting.
It will be.
Yeah. And out west, of course, I mean, the Astros reloaded. They'll get a full season of Justin Verlander, and they added Garrett Cole. So they're going to be just as solid as they were before. For the wild card, like I said, I like the Twins a lot, and definitely the Red Sox for a while there. I mean, it's always interesting to see where the predictions stand in December and in March. I thought the Angels were going to be a little bit more of a contender when they got Ohtani, but he just really has not done that much in spring. So, I kind of have to take them down a notch. I think the West is going to be a little easier for the Astros than I originally thought. I mean, the Mariners will be solid. They're still having problems finding pitching, although, their 1-2 of Felix and James Paxton is as solid as any in the league. But, yeah, I would say Twins and Red Sox for wild card.
And the M's and Halos might be fighting for one of those two wild card spots. But yeah, I've got the Bo Sox, I've got the Twinkies, and Ohtani now being really miserable, pitching. I saw him get lit up, and he didn't look good in spring, and that's a big disappointment for the Halos, who had the mighty high expectations, at least, if not to contend for the division crown, and steal that from the Astros, at least to contend for a wild card spot. And right now, without him being something of high magnitude in 2018, I don't think the Halos really will come close to catching the Astros in the American League West.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree because, I think the Angels' pitching is a little better than a lot of people thought it was. They dealt with a lot of injuries last year in their rotation. But, yeah, without Ohtani, I don't think they can take that next step. And, there's still room for him to grow. I remember a few years back, I suppose I'm dating myself now, but quite a few years back when Ichiro made his debut, he really struggled for a great part of spring. And then probably toward the final 2.5 weeks, he just caught fire and was hitting everything. And that was a magical year for him. He ended up winning the MVP. And I haven't seen that switch flip on in Ohtani yet. And it may not this year. I mean, there is a definite talent difference between the American and Japanese major leagues. So we'll see. But yeah, if he doesn't live up to that expectation, I just can't see the Angels contending.
So Ryan, I'll leave you with this. Your Stros or the Yankees or the field for the American League pennant this season?
I got to go with the Stros. I think it'll be close, and I do think they'll have a pretty epic matchup in the playoffs. But I like the Astros pitching over the Yankees pitching.
And Ryan, with that, I will let you go. Great stuff from you as usual. Thank you for coming back on. It had been a long time, way too long, and we'll do this again sometime. All right?
Absolutely.
And back here on Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company, that was Ryan Ford of the Detroit Free Press. At one point, the page designer for the Freep and the sports section of the Free Press. And the Gizmo production dude, the guy that, created these fancy, page designs, little boxes you would find in the print edition of the Freep. This guy is so uber talented. And now he's the assistant sports editor for the Freep under a relatively new sports editor in Chris Thomas. So my boss at the Free Press is Chris, and some great guys to work with. Very, they're hands-on, they can guide you in the right direction, and they know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about, and they know what they're doing at the end of the day.
All right, Vito, I'll ask you. We won't do the National League this week, but early impressions, who do you think will be the division winners and the wild card participants this season?
Well, if you were listening, I did actually already reveal that to Ryan Ford of the Detroit Free Press. But anyways, I have the Houston Astros in the American League West, and the Mariners could finish in second. In the Central, I have the Indians, the Twins in second. In the American League East, I have the Yankees and the Red Sox in second. And then for the wild card winners, I have the Twinkies and the Red Sox, and the Mariners and the Halos fighting for that second wild card spot along with the Twins. I think the Red Sox, they could blow out the second wild card team in terms of the margin of, games that they'll finish ahead of the second wildcard team. The Red Sox really could win by a lot, have a huge amount of separation between themselves and that second wildcard team in the American League this season.
All right, Vito, great podcast. Always enjoy that baseball conversation. Season kicks off. I can't wait next week to break down the opening week. 6 games to start the season at home versus the Pittsburgh Pirates, than the Kansas City Royals. Like we said last week, we hope they get off to a good start, maybe take 4 of 6, hoping for an opportunity to get off to a good start. Bring the buzz back regarding Detroit Tigers baseball. Good stuff.
And we just hope that J-Zimm doesn't get rocked in his opening day outing. We'll leave it at that, won't we? On this week's episode of Tigers Talk. Enjoy opening day, everybody, and we'll talk to you again next Wednesday for another fresh edition of the podcast.
Thanks again to Dan Hasty and Ryan Ford. We'll see everybody next time.
Adios.